Mitch, welcome. Welcome to Bush Footy Legends.
Thanks for having me, mate. It's exciting. It's always nice to get back to my country roots and talk about the bush a bit.
I'll be honest, I'm a bit nervous going into today. I'm, I suppose, joined on a podcast with someone who's a lot more experienced in this than me. How many have you done now?
Oh, well, I've done a few of these kind of structured ones, but I also am 3 weeks into doing my own morning one, which is just 15 minutes of me rambling.
And,
so
that is not structured, is it? That can go anywhere.
Unstructured as you can go, which is sometimes good and sometimes bad. When it's going south and there's nowhere to hide, it's difficult. But sometimes you get on a bit of a roll and it's kind of nice to just let it flow.
I listening to that, I get the impression that you sometimes are just maybe doing it before you've had your morning coffee and you've just woken up. Is that true?
That's right. It was a lot more difficult before I started Dry July.
Yeah.
So now that I'm kind of not
Oh, that's
it.
a battle. That's
right. It is a battle. I'm 11 days in. And before that, it was quite difficult getting up at 4:30 or 5, especially when there was golf on TV the night before that I was right into and I had a couple of beers or a couple of red wines. It was difficult getting up, but kind of slowly getting into the swing of it a bit more now.
So I'm a bit more comfortable. We've actually got a lot more in common than I thought. You know, we're both from the Great Southern, both from right down the south of Western Australia. For those who don't know, where is Lake Grace?
Lake Grace
if you can describe
is around 350 kilometres southeast of Perth. I think the best way to describe to people where it is, if you look at a map, you find Perth and you find Esperance, draw a line, Lake Grace is in the middle.
Yeah, there's people who don't appreciate the country and they go, all country towns are the same and they don't change. So you recently went back to play a bit of footy in your hometown of Lake Grace, and for those who do know about Lake Grace, it's a bit of a breeding ground, isn't it? Really, for footballers who've gone on to higher things. What was it like going back?
Oh, I've been loving it. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't think there will ever be a place on the planet that will ever be home like Lake Grace was. I say Lake Grace, I also mean Newdigate, because I did live in Newdigate for a fair amount of time as well, and that's where both of my parents grew up on farms. So that place is very special to me. You know, there's a Morton Road in Newdigate, which is a unique place for us. So it's always good for me to go back. And one of my favourite things, I love cities. You know, I've been very, very lucky to have lived in Sydney, Singapore, Melbourne, Perth, some fantastic cities. And I love getting into the city and finding little bars and coffee shops and laneways. But I love putting the city lights behind me and getting out onto the Albany Highway and getting out into the bush. Or these days, my parents are in Beverley, so I jump on the Great Eastern Highway and head that way. I absolutely love it, getting out of the city and just kind of the air gets a bit fresher and you feel the pressure come off your shoulders a little bit that I think you feel in the city. So I really enjoy that. So I'll always be someone who's from the bush, and I look for every opportunity I can to get back there. This year, getting back there, trying to play footy again for the first time in 5 years. My body's not holding up.
You said trying, yeah.
Trying, yeah. My body's not holding up, which is really, really frustrating because I've just been enjoying it so much. And I love it every time I go back there. Everyone's so hospitable. Lake Grace is a beautiful community. A lot of good friends and family there, and I miss it.
So you recently came back. I think you recently came out in the media. It was the first time you picked up a footy in 5 years. Is it like getting on a bike?
It's difficult because my mind still kind of knows how to do all these things. And do you know what the most difficult part of it is? Because now I'm kind of on top of my anxiety. I've got all this energy. I've got this energy, but I don't have the body to kind of keep up with those demands.
Oh, so that's like what, the guys who play reserves who are about 40 or 50, they go, the mind's willing, but the body's not able.
Yes. Well,
you're not going to be like that, are you?
For me, it's interesting because I was about 15 when I started to really struggle with this vomiting and stuff before football. It kind of took over. And every game of football I played was like this internal battle, just trying to get through it. It went from being kind of, as a kid, this performance because I was quite talented, quite good at it, to just being about surviving and getting through the day, and that was it. It was just about getting through. And it's funny now, I feel kind of energetic again, and like I've got that energy I used to have when I was a kid, but I just can't do what I used to be able to do because my body can't do it anymore. Having 5 years off from a sport that is so intense and hard to play is proving difficult to get back into.
Yeah, so your life now, Mr. Anxiety, I suppose, how did that come about? There was obviously a point where you go, I can do something for the greater good here?
Well, it's purely by accident, really.
Yep.
I mean, I think most people who end up doing something similar to what I'm doing, it comes about through sheer accident. 2018, I was in a really, really dark place. I try not to Hollywoodise that. I call it Hollywoodise, trying to profit from, a situation that other people might find themselves in now. I was in that situation. It was very, very difficult, and I was as low as you can get before you go and do anything that you might regret. So I decided in that moment that I was going to turn my life around and I was going to put everything on hold until I did it. At that point, my anxiety had kind of slowly infiltrated and picked apart every aspect of my life and ruined it. And I just wanted to live a normal life. I just wanted to answer the phone when it rang. Yep. I just wanted to be able to go to work and answer a call without having to, get really stressed about it. I wanted to be able to handle every situation in life. And in that journey over the next 2 years, I started to feel better. And then as I felt better, because anxiety had become normal to me. That had become my life. I wasn't, in 2018, I wasn't like, anxiety's kind of ruined my life. I didn't make excuses for things. It just become my life. And then as I got better, I was like, wow, I've been living like that. It was a really shattering moment to realise that the way I've been living was so far from how you should live your life. So then I was like, well, there's obviously a lot of other people out there who are feeling like that. I can't just do what I've done and then move on. I remember my father saying, Mitch, you've beaten it. Why do you have to keep talking about it? And I said, well, it's not about me anymore. It's about those people who are in the same boat. And if I can stop someone from spending 15 years going down that path, because I've obviously lost a lot of friendships and stuff for it being so long. If I had have kind of got in control of it after a couple of years, maybe those friendships would still have been able to be maintained. Yeah. So it's about helping other people who are somewhere else on that journey. And my parents understand that now, but at the start that was quite difficult. So it just comes about naturally. I just went, well, I can't just have this knowledge and experience of going through that and then just kind of park it and move on for my own profit. I want to kind of help people, and I'm in that phase now where I'm trying to turn that into, I guess, a profession.
There's probably people out there who suffer from anxiety. You'll probably later be able to go on the difference between anxiety and being anxious. What is it, I suppose, describing it, what does it actually feel like? There's probably people out there right now, this might be a light bulb moment for them listening, and they go, I battle that. What does it feel like describing it to the person who has no idea?
Do you worry about things in life so much so that it ruins your actual enjoyment of life? I guess that's probably it for me. Does it actually impact and the biggest thing in life, I don't know if we'll have a chance to talk about this, but I did talk about it on my podcast this morning, is our relationships. Is it impacting your relationships? Are you not putting time into your relationships because you're feeling like you're worrying about things so much? You're so worried about work tomorrow, or you're so worried about, it could be your retirement, or you're so worried about your kids, or you're so worried about a sport event next week, or, are you so worried about those things that you're not putting proper time into relationships? Because at the end of the day, the only thing that you're going to have is your relationships to fall back on, when we get older in life. And so for me, if you are, I guess, in that position where those things are stopping you from, life is stopping you from having healthy relationships, I think you need to do something about it.
It's funny, I look up, doing my research for this, so I look up, I type Mitch Morton into Google, Wikipedia comes up, it says you're the 94th ranked player in paddle tennis in Perth. Is that true?
That is not true. That was one of my friends who I used to work with who has
you can edit anyone's page.
That's right,
yeah.
And that's the thing about Wikipedia. And you know what? It just goes to show how easy it is to paint a facade. So one of my friends did that as a joke because I was playing a lot of squash and paddle tennis at some point. And that is the online world. It's fake. So you can literally just go and edit someone's Wikipedia and put something in there, whatever you like. And I think we take what we read on the internet and we take what we see in social media as gospel. And the reality is it's not. People aren't living the lives that they're showing that they're living. Yeah,
and the point I was trying to make is also that your highlights from the grand final will come up, which is obviously a real treasured memory for you. But you look at it as well, and does that define who you are, I suppose, compared to what you were then compared to now? Like, who is Mitch Morton now?
I think the thing that I say to people is it was such a humbling experience to be part of that great team and such a fantastic day. But my inner turmoil and the battle that I was waging internally kind of put a dampener on it. 24 hours later, I was in my bed with my doona pulled over my head, not wanting to go out because it was too much. And when everyone else was out having a good time and celebrating. And that's what our anxiety and our mental health issues do. They make us focus so much on ourselves and what the situation that we're in and it takes away from seeing the big picture and what you're part of,
Yep.
which is really disappointing because it's such a beautiful experience to be part of that I didn't get to enjoy as much as I should have.
Is it still a highlight for you, though?
Oh, absolutely.
Life
it is.
highlight?
It
I'm
is,
not
and
sure.
I guess
Yeah.
it's something that is I look on with more fond memories as I get older. It's one of those things.
It's a boyhood dream, isn't it? Like most
Yeah,
people wanting to
absolutely.
play, anyone plays AFL, playing a grand final.
Yeah, and all you want to do is be part of a team.
Yep.
And all I wanted to do was be a small cog in a big wheel at a big machine, and I felt like that for that 4-week period in the finals at the Swans. It was probably one of the only times I really felt like that throughout my career. And I guess what I say to people is you can push and push and push and push for your issues, but look at me. I pushed and pushed and pushed and won an AFL grand final, which is one of the biggest achievements that you can achieve in Australia. And 24 hours later, I was in bed with my doona pulled over my head, not wanting to go outside. So depending on how big the achievement is you push for, it'll make you feel better for a little bit, but then you'll be straight back to where you were.
So football, the 120 minutes, is that an escape?
Not for me, no way.
So you talk about before and after, in the middle when the game's on? It's still
Nah,
no
it's just pure terror for me. Pure.
Yep.
I think the best way to explain playing football in front of a large crowd, and even if you're playing reserves, knowing it's getting judged and people are looking at your stats and stuff like that, it's traumatic. Now, obviously the word trauma gets thrown around a lot when it comes to defence forces and things like that, because those people see real hardcore, proper trauma. I'm not comparing myself to that at all. But trauma is a very subjective thing, and football was the most important thing in my life. So having to push myself through that with how I was feeling was traumatic for me.
Yep.
And it never, ever got easier. It never got better. So I guess one thing that I learned with it was that you can't out-achieve your issues. And I try to say that to people, whether it's anxiety or depression or whatever it is. You can't out-achieve it. It'll just come back to haunt you later. You need to put time into your issues.
So when did you realise you first, I suppose, had anxiety? And at the point, was there, did your teammates, your clubs know? Obviously, it's a lot. Mental health issues are a lot more recognised now.
I was very good at hiding it.
Yeah.
So I tell a story about my first experience with anxiety when I was living in Newdigate, which is 4 hours southeast of Perth, lining up for a running race when I was 7, and running to the toilets and vomiting, and then having this huge wave of relief wash over me because I didn't have to run the race anymore. It's like, yes, I felt so good. And then I went out and they were waiting for me after 5 or 6 minutes, and it just came straight back. I didn't know that was anxiety. It took me a very, very long time to work that out.
You're 7. Yeah.
I was 7. And so what happened was my teachers had said, are you okay? What's happening? And I said, yeah, I'm fine. And I didn't tell my parents. Yeah. And I started this trend in my life of just gritting my teeth and pushing through it. And no matter how bad it got, I just gritted my teeth and pushed through it. And slowly over the next, 20, from that moment, the next 20, 25 years, it got worse and worse and worse. And then it becomes normal. So we get, from the outside, we see people here, and then we see that at point A, and then we see them at point B, and we think that's happened rather quickly. But in reality, there's small steps between point A and point B. And for me, it just slowly got worse. And each time it got worse, I got used to it, and that became my life, and it would be normal. And it took until probably 2018, and I had some events happen that kind of made me look at it and go, well, this isn't normal. What the hell am I doing with my life? Look at who I've become. And I know that I'm a good person. I come from a great part of the world, from 2 good families. And I know I'm a good person. So I knew that wasn't me, the stuff I was doing. But the stuff I was doing was not stuff that a good person does. So I started to, I guess, attach those behaviours to the anxiety and thought, well, if I can fix this, I can start to live a normal life and I can start to be myself again. And one thing I've learned is the best moments in your life are the ones where you're the most yourself. So I really enjoy now doing my presentations because I'm me and I do it like me, and if people like it, they like it. If they don't, well, I can talk to them and get feedback and try to improve, but I still want to just be me. Whereas I look at my football career and I wasn't me, and that's what upsets me the most.
You've talked about in the past, I suppose, the pressure you placed on yourself. Obviously, the pressure, a lot of young draftees going to the AFL. What was that like? What was that level of pressure you placed on yourself and expectation? Oh,
debilitating is the best word for it. I think I had some issues in my final year of schooling before I was drafted, and I had a back issue, and it's also when my anxiety started to really roll on.
Yep.
By the time I presented for training, in my first day of training, I'd got in pretty average shape, and mentally I was also in pretty average shape as well. I was starting to really, really struggle. And I hid that, and what that looked like from the outside was like I didn't care, and I'd rocked up and I was in average condition, and I hid my anxiety so it looked like I just didn't care.
It's point A to point B.
That's right.
Yeah.
But it happened over 6 or 9 months. And they decided the football club where I was at the time decided the best kind of tactic would be to kind of come down hard on me. And there was some stern words in that. But they didn't realise the anxiety that I had and what I was dealing with, and that kind of tipped me over the edge. And I don't hold anyone responsible for that other than myself, because I didn't tell anyone what I was really going through. And so what happened there was I started to isolate myself, really struggle with the pressure, and I made a decision, which was the worst decision I've ever made, which was instead of finding support to help me around me, I decided I was going to try and out-achieve it. I thought, well, if I work harder and train harder, because that's what I'd done to that moment. That's why I was a pretty good footballer as a kid. I trained hard. And so I decided I was going to out-achieve it. And what happens when you do that, with anxiety, you get really single-minded focus. And so everything else fell away, including all of my relationships. And then I started to struggle more and more and more, because that pressure of putting that thing that you're doing as the only important thing in your life. It's very hard to have multiple focal points in your life when you have anxiety, because what fight or flight does, which is what happens when you get anxiety, is it narrows your focus to one thing. And you worry so much about that thing at the expense of everything else, which is a good system, and it's the reason that we're standing here, but we don't need it anymore.
Yep.
And so that's what I started to do. And over years and years and years, I just went harder and harder at that goal at the expense of everything else, putting extra pressure on me. And, it kind of was really, really debilitating. I saw Ash Barty's press conference this morning about her win at Wimbledon, and she said it's just a game of tennis. That was the complete opposite to the way I felt. Every game of football I felt like I was playing for my career. And it's very hard to
Some people thrive off that.
Yeah. I think if you're physically fit, mentally healthy, maybe you do, but I was not in that state.
Yeah, of course. I suppose the power of vulnerability, and when you actually were able to freely talk about what you've been going through and what you've been suffering, what was that feeling like? And what was the moment when you realised, I'm actually happy to start talking about this?
To be honest, I still am not 100% comfortable sharing everything that I share, because I've got a family and I've got two sets of grandparents. I've got a grandma, and then I've got a grandmother and grandfather. And there's a lot of stuff that happened in my life that I share because it accentuates the point of where I've come from to where I'm going. That might be hard for them to hear, and also my parents. And it's hard for me to share that, knowing that some of my family and friends are going to hear this stuff kind of secondhand, not from me myself. But it's important for me to make other people who are going through stuff feel comfortable, because no one ever made me feel comfortable. And the reason that I do this is because every motivational talk that I ever sat through when I was playing AFL was the general consensus and underlying theme of it was push through this and you'll get this. So we'd get guys come in that had climbed Everest, or someone who had been to the Olympics, and they always had this sort of adversity in their life that they'd push through to achieve some great thing. So that was my mentality, push to achieve, and I kept doing it. I teach people the opposite. There's no point pushing to achieve something if you're not in a good frame of mind, because you're not going to enjoy it when you get there. So you need to put time into yourself. Enjoyment comes from the rewards from just living a good life and being yourself. And so for me, it's about sharing that and changing the mentality towards putting time into yourself and not trying to find your rewards from these big achievements. Find them from just being yourself.
Have you had many people, I suppose, reach out? Is that a great experience from what you've been doing?
That's the only thing that has been keeping me going, because I've been doing this pretty much living off my savings, and my parents help me out here and there via a loan that I pay back when I can. And the messages that I get and the thank yous and stuff like that is kind of the fuel that keeps me going. And it's funny, like there's moments where I'm like, why am I doing this? Because I'm 34 and I can't afford the essentials sometimes in life that other people my age are accustomed to, and I was accustomed to before this. I left a pretty well-paying government job, and I'll be questioning myself, and then I'll get a message right when I need it, and it'll keep me going for another couple of days and whatever. I can still remember when I got my first one, because all I wanted to do, I told my partner, was change the way one person thought about this stuff. I wanted one person to stop and put time into themselves and not go down the path that I did. And it took a couple of months. I started the Instagram account in November last year.
Yep.
And I think it was about mid-January, and I got this text, this huge text. And it was from someone, a man, and he said, I've been struggling, and the first thing that I do every morning is check your page, and for the last 6 or 8 weeks, and I don't know where I'd be without your page. And I just broke down in tears. I just could not, I could not stop crying. I was just like, I didn't know what to do because I'd done it. I did exactly what I wanted to do, which was
just
change
purpose.
one person's mentality. And it's one of those things that I try not to take for granted, because now I've kind of got over 2,000 followers, and it's grown. It's been fantastic. The sport's been amazing.
Next is 1 million.
And I don't look at the numbers, but now I kind of have this constant feed of communication with people, and I never take it for granted. And I always remind myself why I started this. And it becomes hard because now it's a balancing act between turning it into a business that I can do for a career and still being very authentic and being myself and making sure that I'm doing it for the right reasons, and that's a balancing act.
You obviously got that country background as well. No doubt there's plenty of people out there in country WA, and we know the stigma and everything like that. Is that also a hope to try and break that down? Yeah,
well, look, the thing that I say to people is I pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, because that was the way that, not specifically my parents, but that's the way that we were taught in the bush, was kind of just grit your teeth and push through it. I've always been like that. And look where it got me. You know, I was, sorry to be graphical, the graphic nature of this, but I was 31, 2 drug overdoses, both could have gone either way. Honestly, could have easily gone either way. I've had 3 or 4 other very, very, very touch and go moments, because I'd put myself in, you know, these situations to try to numb that pain, you know, risky behaviour and gambling and drugs and alcohol and sex and just stupid stuff to try and numb that anxiety. All because I kept pushing and pushing and pushing and thinking that was tough, to just push through it. And it probably should have cost me my life. I'm pretty lucky to be here. So that's where it got me, pushing through it, trying to be tough.
Yep.
I used to think being tough was just pushing through stuff, but now I think it's about doing whatever you need to do to be healthy and happy in yourself, for your family and friends. So
and that's strength.
Yes, and I've changed my perspective on that as well. I've had to shift my beliefs as well.
If you don't mind just going back briefly, I suppose, when you did pull the pin on your AFL career when you were at Sydney at the time, can you talk about, I suppose, what's it like leaving that structure, and how you I think you've said before, you found it that was probably one of the worst things. You thought that was going to end your anxiety.
Well, because my anxiety had started when I went into the AFL system, it had kind of built up in year 12 at school, and then really tipped over the edge when football became my job. It just was too much for me, this constantly having to perform at the one thing that gave me the most anxiety, because I put so much pressure on myself. And I thought that the anxiety came from football. So I thought, now that it's finished, it was kind of why I retired. It was too hard.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, now it's going to get better. And the next 5 years after football were just, you know, I call it in my presentation the spiral, because I think I lived in 4 cities. I had 2 or 3 different partners. I changed uni degrees 2 or 3 different times. I had 7 or 8 jobs. I was literally just going around in circles because there was no structure. I had no purpose, which football gave me. And I really, really spiraled. And at the end of 2018, I was in a really, really bad way. And it could have gone one of 2 ways, I guess. So I'm happy to be here.
What's that point? Where's the point when you go, I can turn this?
I had gone through a pretty rough breakup at the time. I was driving an Uber for $14 an hour. I couldn't get a job. I'd been applying for jobs.
Is that a legal hourly rate?
No, it's modern slavery. It's disgusting. Don't get me started on,
because I worked at Red Rooster, I reckon, when I was in year 10 for about $6 an hour, and I thought that was good.
Yeah, all these things that we take for granted at the moment, they come at a price.
Absolutely.
Somewhere along the chain. But anyway, we like saving money on all that stuff so we can go and spend it on something else to show off on social media. But anyway, we won't get into that today. But my anxiety was so bad that I couldn't drive the Uber long enough to pay for my bills, because I had a car loan, home loan, credit card debt. I'd been at mature age uni for 3 years. I owed my parents money. I was in a real bad way. And I couldn't bring myself to do more than 4 or 5 hours of it a day, I would just get so anxious. But 4 or 5 hours times 7 days is 30, 35 hours times $14 is only $500, $600. My outgoings per week were more than that with rent and all that stuff. So I literally couldn't make enough money to pay my way. And I was in a really, really bad place, and I had stopped talking to my parents because they were so worried about me. I couldn't bear to make them any more worried. And I'd given up.
Had that feeling you were a burden sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'd given up, and I had no one to talk to. I'd lost touch with a lot of friends because of the spiral that I've been on in different cities and stuff. So the only person I could call was my ex-girlfriend, who was in Finland. I don't even know what the time was. And I called her and just broke down. And hearing in her voice that she didn't want to talk to me because she was like, you're not my problem. Like, seriously, what are you calling me for? She'd moved on. Hearing that, for the first time in my life, because until that moment, I'd never been, anxiety's ruined football, relationships, family and that. I kind of blamed myself.
Okay.
I'd been a really talented junior footballer and then got into the AFL and really struggled. Did my best, but really struggled. And like everybody else who from the outside, I'd kind of just gone, well, you couldn't handle it type of thing. That was my mentality for myself. Yep. And for a split moment, I went, you know what? My anxiety has ruined my life. It has ruined everything because I know what I felt like internally the whole time. And for a second, I had a poor me moment, which I don't do regularly. And I went, my anxiety's ruined everything. I got really angry at it. And so I woke up the next day and I called my mum and I said, Mum, I'm going to have a couple of years off of trying to be anything in life. I'm just going to get a job that's kind of just like a safe job, and I'm going to figure out what anxiety is. And then I started this mission that started reading and ended up reading 150, 200 books, just went nuts, and then started to feel better and put together my own understanding of what anxiety is, and that's rolled into what this is now. So
pretty committed search for answers.
Well,
100, I don't think 150 books.
Yeah, it's all I did for the first 18 months. I was reading a book on a Saturday, a book on a Sunday, book during the week, audio books. I was just going nuts, watching interviews, reaching out to people who wrote the books and chatting and stuff like on Instagram. And it was a real search for something that was going to help me. And more so, I guess the best way to explain it is I stopped looking for answers and I started looking for information to turn into my own kind of solution. And doing that allowed me to put together aspects of different philosophies and theories and methods and treatments and things into something that works for me. And that's what I teach people to do now is grab all that information. I say put it in a blender and come up with something that works for you. So.
Yeah, there's what worked for you might not work for someone else.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah, so looking forward, I suppose, where do you want to take this? Where do you want to take Mr. Anxiety?
Well,
you talk about it not being, you want it to be obviously your job in regards to it's your passion.
Yeah, like I'm at the point now where I'm trying to turn it into something that I can do long term. That's challenging, but there are a lot of people out there who are in a similar position to what I was, and that's why I started it. The whole process of trying to monetize that is uncomfortable for me. Very uncomfortable. Yep. I've actually got a girl who comes in and helps me 2 days a week to come in and help with that side of it.
You don't want it to feel like a business, do you?
That's right. Yeah. But the rate it's going at the moment, we haven't got long left before I have to go and get another job. So she's in to help me to monetize it and to tidy it up and get it to a point where we can both have an income off it and we can grow. And I guess where I see it going is probably more to the events side of things because I really enjoy the events and I feel like that's the best way to impart that knowledge and what I've learned. And the underlying theme of it isn't this is how you beat anxiety. It's this is how I beat it. And you follow this process and find your own little methods. That's kind of what I want to teach people. It's not about me telling people things. It's about me showing them what I've done. And then they can go out and do it themselves. From a selfish point of view, I have always wanted to live in America. I've always wanted to go to America.
Good coffee there.
Is there?
I don't know, apparently.
Okay, so I think we have the best coffee in the world here.
You reckon?
Oh, we're blessed. Yeah, absolutely.
What's your favourite coffee spot here?
My favourite, the best barista. Like, so I'll drive and try.
Yeah, so by the way, just for a disclaimer for everyone, we're recording at Magic Studios in West Perth, so we will get out in the bush eventually. But that's quite the ironic thing. We're at Bush Footy Legends in West Perth.
In the city. So my favourite barista in the world is in the city, in Mad Lily's Cafe.
Okay.
There's 3 of them. They're owned by a family, and they're all just, they take their coffee very seriously.
Yep.
They take their time. You might have to wait an extra 5 minutes, but it'll be the best coffee
So
you've ever had.
it's that morning ritual you like? Is it
Yeah.
the coffee or the morning ritual?
It's a bit of both. And
Yeah.
I really enjoy the relationship that I have with the baristas. Like, I kind of get to know them. And
Yeah, I tell you, I can't stand when you go somewhere for a coffee. And I know we're in the middle of Perth and there's a lot of people. But if you go in there regularly, they need to know your name, I think.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They need to work that out real quick.
And they need to know what you order by face.
Yeah.
I think that's really
Yeah.
important. They
Yeah.
go, if they ask you every day what's your name, I'm not sure if they're worth going
Yeah,
back.
no, they have about 5 days to work that out, I reckon.
Yep, give them a
So-
week. What's the best coffee in the bush?
That's a good question. I will say their cafe, I don't know if it's still called Cafe 43 in Narrogin.
Yeah, I've been there. Yep.
I think it might have a new name. I should Google it. But they're very good. They're actually a really good little cafe. Like, they're
Yep.
really friendly and they take it pretty seriously. So
Yeah.
they're good. York has a place called Botanicalia.
Okay. We
So-
might put this out there over the series. What is
Yeah.
the best coffee in
so
region
that's
WA?
so York, they're quite lucky in York. They have that cafe.
Yeah, I'm just going to go something basic. I've done the trip to Perth to Albany that many times. I'll go to the Williams Woolshed.
Yeah,
just
nice.
just real.
That's
But
not too bad.
Yeah, but you have to wait in line.
Yeah,
But hey,
yeah.
there could be worse things going around at the moment. Football. Any more chance for a kick this year?
I'm trying. I just
Yeah.
have this nerve issue down the bottom of my back.
Yeah.
So I'm able to run basically as far as I want, just going for a jog. I love
Mhm.
running. But as soon as I start to sprint and turn and twist, it compacts the bottom of my spine and it impinges on the nerve, and then it grabs my hamstring and I basically can't walk. So I've played 3 games this year and I've got through a half each time, and then I feel pretty good. But then that happens and I literally can't move. So
Can you just stand in the goal square and hail taxis?
I did that, but often I have a pretty decent opponent, and I kind of need a run to get the ball, and it's hard playing on someone when you can't move.
So you're playing down there, or I suppose for those who don't really know Lake Grace, it's made up of the. Is there anyone else in Lake Grace other than the Mortons, Bairstows, and Fifes? Is there anyone else in Lake Grace?
Well, Liam Baker,
Yep.
2-time.
Oh, sorry. My
Premiership.
apologies. Of course.
We've claimed Liam because he's from Pingarring, which is 40,
yeah.
40 minutes from Lake Grace, but his mum was a teacher at Lake Grace, so he
Yeah,
went
fair
to
enough.
school there.
Claim him.
So, yeah, Lake Grace has some fantastic footballing families. There are some really handy footballers down there. An old fella, I'll say an old fella, by the name of Tyson Prater was a really good junior footballer, and he's
Yeah.
got
Still
one of
playing?
He won he's 33, won the league B&F last year for
The
Ongerup.
Ganser medal.
Yeah, for Ongerup. He won it last year, so that was pretty impressive from him. He's getting pretty old in the tooth, but he has one of the best left foots you'll ever see.
Yeah.
I love country football, and some of my favourite players of all time are obviously made up of AFL footballers, but also country footballers.
Yeah.
So,
Any you want to share?
I think there's a gentleman named Kelvin Holmes.
Yep.
Who played for Lake Grace and then I think went to Cookerun after that. He's from Pingerup Lake Grace. It's
Yep.
called Lake Grace Pingerup,
Yep.
I should say.
The Bombers, yep.
And he's one of the best footballers I've ever seen. He was very, very, very good. It's hard to describe how good he was. He was on Carlton's list, I believe, for a little bit, but then went back to the farm. You know, a lot of people don't realise that before the current kind of influx of total payer payments that
Professionalism, I suppose.
and professional that the AFL has now, a lot of people in the 80s and 90s chose to stay on the farm.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of really, really good country footballers. Obviously, the Ditchburns are very close to Lake Grace, but in a different league.
Yep.
So they're up the road in Cookerun. So I never really got to see Ross and that place so much, but they're footballing family as well. But there's some great footballers in that league, and Boxwood Hills and Jerramungurup dominated in different areas for ages. They have some fantastic players. I went to school with a few of the guys from Jerramungurup, and they're very good footballers.
So unfortunately, the comp is at 5 teams at the moment. You probably remember the days when there was more, but I suppose the country towns are getting a bit smaller, and the farms. And
I have to mention Ian Lloyd from Newdigate.
Oh, he's actually still playing.
Yes, and he was my. So there were 2 guys in Newdigate when I was a kid, Ian Lloyd and Jesse Duff. Jesse moved to Albany.
Yeah.
I don't know how much football Jesse played, but they were my idols. They were the 2 coolest people in the world for me. And that they would probably be 2 of my top 10 players that I've ever seen, just from those players, and then the guys from Lake Grace when I was a kid watching Noel Bairstow and Chris Bates and all these guys who won
Yep.
Ryan Bates won grand finals in the
There's,
late 90s.
there's Luke Bairstow playing now.
That's right,
still.
yeah, Noel's son. So, yeah, I'm very lucky to have got to see all those great players.
Yeah, you come back and they're still playing, a lot of them.
Yeah,
come back
a lot of them,
recently.
yeah. So it's awesome to go back.
It's back to the future and nothing's changed.
Yeah,
sort of
that's
thing.
right. It's awesome to go back. And they're getting a little bit slower, but they're still good to watch them.
So, Mitch, perfect. What's next for you?
Well, yeah, I'm really enjoying at the moment getting these talks going. So we started with 6 people. My first one was 6 people.
Yep.
And then it's slowly grown from 6 to kind of 15, 20, and then now we're up to about 50. So that's exciting. I'm loving it. And what we're able to do now is, because we're able to sell a few more tickets, is get some guests in. So last week we had a meditation expert, mindfulness and meditation expert named Helen Appleyard from Shine Meditation. And the next one, I'm actually going from here to meet a guy who is a sound healing therapist and a counsellor. And we're going to chat about what he can bring to it. And then I'm looking to bring in psychologists and really expand what we're doing. And as it gets bigger, it allows me to offer more to the people that are coming, which is what it's all about. So that's really exciting. And then obviously I have my little partner in crime who comes in and helps me on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and she's got some ideas about how we can kind of get it going and that. And it's exciting. It's challenging.
Absolutely. Well, you had the other night the issues of live presenting.
Yes.
They come up everywhere.
Absolutely.
Don't they? Yeah.
And I learned the other night, and it's one thing that I've had to learn the hard way. And I've tried to stay away from this mindset that I'm kind of performing, and I've tried to keep it really raw, and I've tried not to see myself as someone who gets up and performs. But
you're on the stage though.
Yeah, I'm at the point now where I was a real learning curve the other day because I tried to ad-lib the intro, but the lights went down. I couldn't see anybody, and then this bright light came in my face, and I tried to ad-lib it, and I just had a meltdown, which was really good for me because I haven't been anxious for ages.
Yeah.
So I got to remember what that feeling was like and how to kind of push through it and then get back to what I knew and I was comfortable. But it was a good experience, and I talked about it on my podcast. But that was a real learning curve for me, and I woke up the next morning and came up with a kind of plan of how I can be better prepared. And unfortunately, for me, it kind of means changing my mindset to being a little bit more, I need to practice and rehearse. Yeah. I haven't really done that. I've just tried to be me.
Yeah.
But I do need to start seeing it as me presenting to people, which is, I guess I've got to this point pretty much on raw ethnicity, is that the word for it? Authenticity. Just trying to share my knowledge in the way that I naturally do it, but I guess I need to put some more effort now into kind of presenting it a bit better. So.
Well, hopefully what you shared with us today is, can help not only people what you're doing with with Mr. Anxiety Project, but obviously listening to this podcast as well, especially reaching out to those in the country as well. Very relatable. Probably got a story that a lot of people can relate to. So appreciate your openness today, and great to see you've got a great outlook on life now.
No, thank you for having me. It's always such a pleasure to talk about this and from the bush as well. Being from the bush and kind of incorporating the two. It's where I'm from. I'll always be from there. And it's a real privilege coming on these podcasts. So thank you for that, and thank you for doing what you're doing.
No worries. Thank you.